All right, let's talk about one of the wildest, funniest, and honestly most brutal adventure stories you'll ever come across, Voltaire's Candide. Now, on the surface, this book is a nonstop, globe-trotting adventure. You've got shipwrecks, earthquakes, long-lost lovers, the whole shebang. But underneath all that action, it is a full-blown attack on a very specific philosophical idea. And Voltaire, well, he basically uses his main character, the incredibly sweet Candide, as a human punching bag to make his point. Here it is. This is the central idea that Voltaire is trying to absolutely demolish. It comes from Candide's tutor, Dr. Pangloss, and it's the core of a philosophy called optimism. The idea is that we live in the best of all possible worlds, where literally everything that happens, no matter how awful, is somehow a necessary part of a perfect cosmic plan. Voltaire thought this was not only wrong, but dangerously absurd. So absurd, in fact, that he wrote this entire novel just to tear it to shreds. So the best possible world? Where exactly does our story kick off? Well, it begins in what Pangloss says is the best castle, owned by the best baron, in, you guessed it, the best of all possible worlds. We're in Westphalia at the castle of Thunder Tentren Kref, and we meet our hero, Candide. He's a young man who's really defined by two things. He's incredibly good-natured, and he is completely, utterly naive. A real sweet summer child. Now, you gotta understand, Pangloss's version of optimism isn't just, looking on the bright side. Oh no, it's a whole rigid system of logic. He argues, with a completely straight face, that our noses were obviously made for wearing spectacles, and that's why we have spectacles. Or that our legs were clearly designed for stockings, which is why we wear stockings. To him, everything has a cause and a perfect effect. And Candide, in his total innocence, just eats it all up. He believes every single word. Of course, this perfect little bubble doesn't last long. Not at all. Candide is caught sharing a completely innocent little kiss with the Baron's daughter Cunigund. The Baron sees this cause, and the immediate effect is that he kicks Candide so hard that he's sent flying out of the castle gates and into the snow. And just like that, he's been expelled from paradise. So much for the best of all possible worlds, right? All right, on to some cruel lessons in reality. Now that he's been booted from his sheltered little life, Candide is about to get what you might call a crash course in how the world actually works. And his education isn't going to come from any books, but from the relentless, brutal reality of the 18th century. First up, the glorious art of war. Almost right away, he gets tricked by some army recruiters and is forced into the Bulgarian army. Not knowing any better, he just decides to go for a walk one day, and for that, he's accused of desertion and is brutally beaten. He's forced to run the gauntlet, where 2,000 soldiers beat him senseless. He only survives because a king happens to be passing by. And after all that, for surviving this insane punishment, they call him a hero. The gap between that word and what actually happened to him is just massive. And the scale of this horror is just staggering. 30,000. That's the estimated number of people killed in a single heroic battle that Candide is forced to witness. He has to walk through fields piled high with the dead and the dying, through entire villages that have been burned to the ground. It's a level of horror that is just impossible to square with the idea that everything is for the best. And yet, you'd think that would be enough to shake his faith, right? Nope. That philosophy holds on tight. After he escapes the war, he's starving. People treat him horribly. But then he's found by this genuinely kind man, an Anabaptist named James, who takes him in. And this one single act of kindness is enough for Candide to just forget all the horror he just saw and go right back to his optimistic beliefs. It really shows you just how deep that initial programming runs. So if you think this is just about Candide's bad luck, think again. Voltaire is just getting warmed up. He's about to zoom out and show us that it's not just one guy having a bad time. It's the whole world. The entire planet seems to be a stage for one disaster after another, and the next stop on this misery tour is Lisbon. So they arrive in Lisbon and, boom, a catastrophic earthquake hits. 30,000 people are dead in an instant. James, the one truly good guy we've met, drowns while trying to save the very sailor who just attacked him. And how do the local authorities react? They decide the best way to prevent future earthquakes is to hold a public burning of heretics. I am not kidding. And in the middle of all this insanity, Pangloss gets hanged and Candide is flogged. The logic is completely unhinged, and that is exactly Voltaire's point. Just when you think things cannot possibly get any worse, Voltaire introduces us to the old woman, and her life story is just
A relentless checklist of every horrible thing you can imagine. She was born a princess, her fiancé was poisoned, she was enslaved by pirates, she watched her own mother get torn to pieces, she survived plagues and wars. And then, in one of the most famous and frankly grotesque details in all of literature, she had one of her buttocks carved off and eaten by starving soldiers. Yep, that happened. So her experiences lead her to this powerful challenge. She's on a ship with a bunch of other people, and she basically dares them. She says, go on, everyone tell your life story, and if you can find a single person here who hasn't wished they were never born, you have my permission to throw me into the ocean. And of course, she wins the bet. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has a story of profound misery. What Voltaire is showing us is that suffering isn't some rare exception. It's the universal human condition. Okay, after all of that darkness, Voltaire finally gives us a little bit of a break. He gives us a glimpse of a world that actually could be the best of all possible worlds. Candide and a servant, Cacombo, get lost, stumble out of the jungle, and find themselves in the mythical city of gold, El Dorado. And man, what a place this is. El Dorado is the exact opposite of Europe in every way. In Europe, you have religious persecution. Here, everyone is a priest, and they're all just thankful. In Europe, constant war. Here, total peace. And the best part? In Europe, people kill each other for gold and jewels. In El Dorado, they're just worthless pebbles that kids play with in the street. There are no courts, no prisons, because everyone is reasonable and just. It's a perfect society built on science and logic. So what do our heroes do now that they've found actual, literal paradise? Do they stay? Of course not. They decide to leave. And why? Well, it's because of the very human flaws that El Dorado doesn't have. They figure, hey, if we stay here, we're just like everyone else. But if we go back to Europe with all this gold, we can be richer than kings. They choose greed, vanity, and the messy human world over perfection. The irony is just perfect. So Candide leaves El Dorado, now fabulously wealthy, with sheep literally carrying bags of jewels. But his real-world education is far from over. In fact, his journey of disillusionment is about to hit its final, absolute breaking point. This is where he has to choose a new philosophy. This is the moment that changes everything. In Suriname, they meet an enslaved man on the side of the road. The man is missing a hand and a leg. His hand was lost in an accident at the sugar mill, and his leg was cut off as a punishment for trying to escape. And this man looks at Candide and delivers one of the most devastating lines in the book. He says, "It is at this expense that you eat sugar in Europe." And that's it. This isn't a random earthquake. This isn't fate. This is a cruel, man-made system. And that is the final straw. Faced with this direct, undeniable, systematic evil, Candide finally turns his back on everything he was taught. He renounces optimism. It's not because of some clever philosophical argument. It's because of the raw, undeniable proof of human cruelty staring him right in the face. The spell is finally broken. So now that he's rejected one philosophy, Candide goes looking for another one. He needs a new way to understand this brutal world. And he finds a scholar named Martin, who is basically the anti-Pangloss. He is a total pessimist. Martin believes the world isn't a perfect creation at all. He thinks it's a grim battlefield between good and evil, and, let's be honest, evil is clearly winning. So for Martin, what really drives humanity? Not some grand, benevolent plan, no way. It's all the worst impulses: envy, greed, anxiety, and a relentless desire to hurt each other. He gives Candide a brand new, cynical lens to see the world through. And the truly sad part? As they continue their travels, Martin is almost always proven right. I mean, just think about the incredible journey Candide has been on. He started as this total blank slate in a fantasy castle, believing the world was perfect. Then he was thrown into a world of unimaginable horror, and he tested that philosophy against reality until it completely shattered. He's been stripped of all his innocence and forced, finally, to see the world for what it really is. So where does all this leave us? If Pangloss's blind optimism is just a dangerous fantasy, and Martin's bleak pessimism is a paralyzing dead end, then what's the alternative? This is the brilliant part of the book. Voltaire's final answer isn't another big, abstract theory. He rejects both of those extremes. Instead, he offers something much smaller and much more practical. He offers an action. After all their travels, after all the chaos, the characters finally settle down on a small farm. And they come to this famous conclusion: we must cultivate our garden. Now, this isn't about hiding from the world's problems. It's about redefining our role in it. It means we should stop endlessly debating why the world is such a mess and instead start doing the tangible, useful work that's right in front of us. Focus on your own small corner of the world. And so the question Voltaire leaves us with is this: if we accept that this isn't the best of all possible worlds, then what is our garden? And what are we doing to cultivate it?